The following is real, deep, esoteric, and most definitely creative lore, and I will hear no opinion to the contrary. On the origin of the name Lyg. One day, in a very special room, in a very special office, kings were looking at a map of Tamriel. They were new kings and old kings, and some of them only wanted money as kings.
What do you mean by that?
So they traced a path along this map to document how things may have happened and how they might have not happened yet. But there was only one map, so they passed it back and forth. The newest king drank lots of coffee and needed lots of it to see how exactly all of these ideas could fit, no matter how small, no matter how many. His elder brother king had actually been hired a month before the newest, but started 8 days later than his younger, impatient sibling. And there was a mighty king who had been there 3 months in a private office, and when we knew his name to be true, we bowed our heads and called him uncle. We acknowledged that all kings were not rulers, but equal and therefore bonds of kingship. But so many ideas, and all at once. Whoops, the map tore into quarters, and the coffee spilled, and the kings did quickly sop up the mess. But yet, still yet, wanted their notes. Oh no, here was a queen at the door and she did not like this racket. Plus, the monkeys, sure, were tired, so they threw the map of kings into the trash. They went to their various stations and wrote what they remembered, or did not think to write at all. But lo, for some reason, the alarm bell went off. Lyg, 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 Lyg. And shit, that means fire. So the 3 monkeys grabbed the whole trash basket for no other reason than maybe our only chance to save the Tamriel they had danced around. One held the basket, the other held an inner door open, and the third held the outer door in. But weirdly, the sprinklers did still hit the open trash, so they got outside and dumped down the contents of the trash because the basket at least held some water and the computers still held some notes. One monkey got really wet trying to do the right thing. The second got really mad about the queen for all the wrong things, and the third just stood there kicking through the trash for a real reason until... Oh, look at these map parts all skewed around and drying weirdly, and the admixture of stains, all unliked, looked best from beneath. So then the monkeys that really cared forgot about all else except those lines across the dying and broken and backwards map, and they all nodded and smiled and said, yes, that is how we will remember everything everyone in that room ever said. And the alarm then sputtered one last Lyg, and that made the Monkey Kings laugh nervously and rolled those maps and said, I'm going back in. Duck your head under the broken light bulb, swinging to and from the one room that will never be used again because smoke. I am an atlas of smoke, said these pieces of the map, and we knew it to be called Lyg. Vivek wrote this. So, what does all of this mean in-game? Well, let's run through the in-game sources, and would you look at that? Every person in the universe that has ever talked about Lyg is either a notorious liar, delusional, or refuses to give a full answer. Markan Cameron, delusional.
The cold harbour of Meridia, Periite's quagmire, the 10 moon shadows of Mythala, and Dawn's beauty, the princedom of Lorcan, misnamed Tamriel by deluded mortals.
Or God of the Obscure, blatant liar.
I'm free to lie as much as I like, unless you, or anyone else for that matter, ask me a direct question. Cheap trick if you ask me.
Vivek, both.
The river drains into the sea as my divinity flows out of me.
And then there are the half-baked responses. The 9 coruscations mention that there was once a tragic prince of Lyg, probably Molak Ball, given that the following line mentions a darkness coming from within him, but the lines are also chopped up, so it could be anyone. We know that Magna G can appear in that place, given that the theme of them being able to go to Lyg comes up in different sources. Notably, Zero Lyg is a Magna G and a daughter of Magnus, the architect of creation, who traveled to Lyg and fought besides Lorcan. Whatever that means, she's also associated with the flesh, but given that Lorcan is associated with flesh divinity, this isn't really a surprise. And then there are the dregs. Both Vivek and Markan Cameron agree that the dregs once ruled Lyg, though they both describe this place differently and ascribe different properties and principles to it. Markan Cameron describes it as basically a place that existed prior to contemporary Tamriel and now either no longer exists or is destroyed and left abandoned. Vivek is the only person that goes out of his way to attempt to provide a semblance of a definition, but he doesn't talk about Lyg directly. He talks about adjacent places in general, which Lyg is one of them. And I quote from the 36 Sermons of Vivek: "The adjacent place where the grabbers live is the illusion of the vocal, or the middle realm of thought, by which I mean the constructed." Warning, this is a single quote from one of the most difficult sermons of Vivek, which, given that we are talking about the sermons of Vivek, that says a lot. In the simplest terms that I can provide to explain this quote, language is inherently bound to abstract thought. There is nothing connecting the vocal sound table to this object, but the connection still exists. So when I say table, someone might think of something like this: the connection is the illusion of the vocal that exists within the middle realm of thought, which is constructed thoughts. Adjacent places, therefore, are parallel dimensions in which the illusion of constructed thoughts exists. What does this mean? Well, when Michael Kirkbride was asked directly, does Lyg exist in the same world space, or however you want to call it, as Tamriel, he responded by saying, try not to imagine Lyg. That's all I'm gonna say. It is Tamriel's parallel dimension. I never said it wasn't unknown. If adjacent places are the illusion of the vocal, then Lyg isn't just a place. It's a state of understanding that manifests itself as a place. Remember, the adjacent place is the illusion of the vocal, or the middle realm of thought. Therefore, if I declare that this is a bottle, that perception that ties the vocal bottle with the object you see on screen is in and of itself, in a way, an adjacent place, to an extent. Because if you were to then say, no, it's actually a hat, that term is still adjacent to the same object. It still exists in the middle realm of thought, constructed speech. That is what the sermons of Vivek are trying to say about adjacent places.
I'm what you might call an aspect, eh? Like an idea's shadow. Don't make a face, I'm telling you the truth. Not my fault your language is so crude.
But how does that exactly tie itself to Lyg? Well, Lyg, based on the quotation marks evidence, is exactly that illusion of the vocal, but for Tamriel. It's still there, on Nirn. It is a parallel dimension where a different illusion of Tamriel applies. That illusion, however, is still adjacent to the same object, Tamriel. That illusion is probably the torn map I read about earlier. It's still there, on Nirn, but it's more so adjacent to the concept of Tamriel, but it still adheres to the same principal form, Tamriel. I will put it in the simplest terms that I can come up with. Lyg seems to be an adjacent version of Tamriel, which exists as a parallel dimension to Tamriel, but still is present on Nirn, the same way that objects are adjacent to different names, but are still confined in the same space. Okay? I'm not helping. Okay, put it to you this way. This is a bottle. For you. For me, it is a JPEG I found on Google Images that I decided that it portrays a bottle in a way that I want it to be presented. Both terms exist in the same space. They are adjacent to the same object, but are parallel with one another. I hope that helps. Since we are here making theories, here is another one. These are dregs. They are written like this, but are pronounced like this. Dregs, written like this, means residue. So one could say that they are the residue from a previous time, be it a parallel universe, a previous kappa, or a previous state of Tamriel. Or coffee drops. That works too. And that actually might be the simplest term. I hope the comments end up filled to the brim with theories that are just as absurd as mine. But above even that, I hope you enjoyed this video and found the discussion, if anything else, interesting. Not every lore discussion needs to be super complicated. Some can just be normal complicated. And with that being said, and until next time, have a good day.